All right, guys, this is the third episode of our podcast, and yeah, and we're here two special guests, a good friend, a good brother. Um, yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourself to the people?
Well, my name is Luis Pimentel. I'm 21 and I'm interested in politics.
Perfect.
My name is Marcos, and on my free time, I like to explore the esoteric world of history and psychology.
What about the Bible? Are you not into
It,
Jesus,
what is in the Bible part of history?
dude? You're different. All right, interesting. So yeah, today we're gonna touch into a little bit of little things that we learned in here today, what we study, about whether it has to do with Carl Jung, whether it has to do with Nick J, uh, the self, woman, and of course Jesus, how he's changed our life and improved. And since this is the first time Pimentel is here on the pod, I have a question for you. How has what's your take on Jesus and how has he changed your life?
Well, my take on Jesus is that I love him. I always, I always want to get closer to him, and I guess one way he changed my life is once a good friend of mine, next to me, told God about my brother. Then my brother told it to me. It changed my life because it made me see the whole spiritual world differently, and yeah, and I guess from there, I just want to get closer to Jesus as much as I can, even though none of us are perfect, but still try my best.
So what's your take on Jesus?
I love him.
Right. Good. Okay. How has Jesus changed your life?
I think you already asked me that question.
How has he changed your life?
Oh, uh, um, honestly, uh, trying to remember because I know I did sinful stuff
We gotta
back in
do
the day.
sinful stuff.
No, but worse back. Not
All
no.
right. For those who don't know, this man with the mic, he used to kick the Bible. He
Yeah,
didn't throw it. I remember seeing that, and I
yeah,
was just like, out of it, like, wow, like, what has this man came turned into? The enemy was always taking over,
yep,
but he's changed. I'd say Jesus saved his life for sure.
yep. Yeah, I remember that. I remember I grabbed the Bible and I tossed it in the floor, kicked it, and then I was, yeah, that was it. And then after that, I was like, now I think about it, I'm like, that was some dumb stuff I did back in the day.
Really.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Um, yeah. So that was an interesting thing about Jesus. Um, if you guys are still watching, feel free to leave a like, and help us support this stream or this video. Okay, so if you guys remember, our great friend here, Marcos, and for those who don't know you, um, no, he already introduced himself. Okay, so all right, let's get straight into this. We had a conversation a couple days ago, and you were telling me how you were learning about, you were doing some research about, was it the mystery of Golgothon? If you want to touch into that, what do you know about that? Why don't you explain to me what you know?
It was February 13 when we had that talk.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
exact day. But um, with the mystery of Golgothon, when I was telling you about the mystery of Golgothon, I was barely diving deep into that study. But and tell me what you guys think. But the mystery of Golgothon, which is written by Rudolf Steiner, talks about how many topics, and one of the topics is how Jesus became Christ, in the sense that he became God.
But wasn't he our what? What do you think about? I don't want to touch on that. You said that how he became Christ, but what about to those people who say he was already the Son of God? So how could he become God?
Well, so your question is for those people who believe that he was already God, and because he was the Son of God. So yes, he was basically already appointed, but first he had to go through the trials that every man has to go to. You know, the only thing is that he was already appointed, but first he had to prove himself to God, and by doing that, he had to go through the trials that every man goes to, and so he could also relate to us, and so like in any battle that we go through, we understand. He understands your pain, and with that, so with the study with the mystery of Golgothon, Rudolf Steiner goes on to teach the Western world. He had to teach the West.
Speak on the mic.
Rudolf Steiner wanted to teach the Western world how to about about God and all that. So what he did was he made a class. He made a class in over here in the West. Are you yawning?
Yep. Wow.
Disrespectful. Whatever, whatever. But look, listen. Um, so Rudolf Steiner, he wanted to uh preach his teachings onto the Western world, but the thing, uh, he first needed to wait for this professor who was uh teaching kids how to let me start off again. Rudolf Steiner was wanting to teach anthrop- anthropology to the Western world and introduce his studies his studies to the Western world, right? But he couldn't because there was a um because he was part of this club, this group called it was the study of anthropology and the theo, theo, theology, theology,
Theology.
no theology, theology, and the leader of that group was Miss Base. He called her Miss Basin, Miss Basin, and she had already a professor teaching the in the Western world, who was his name was Mister Leadbeater. His name was Mister Leadbeater, and he wasn't a Rudolf Steiner wasn't able to teach the Western world about anthropology and and his studies on Christianity, esoteric Christianity, which he liked to teach, and he was trying to bring it into the Western world. The thing is that he needed Mister Leadbeater to stop being a professor, and
You can go in there and find the blue shirt that says Cerbicon in the second door.
and
Please.
uh, and the interesting thing about it is that he first needed to wait for Mister Beasley to Mister Leadbeater to like stop being a professor there. And Rudolf Steiner was against his teachings because Mr. Leadbeater was teaching the Western kids how to masturbate,
Right.
and he
Master what?
masturbate.
Wait, whoa. Go back.
Go back.
Yeah.
What's the question?
No, go back. You go like one sentence back. This guy was teaching kids how to masturbate.
Yes,
How?
yes, in the sense that he had his own he had his own ideology, and he was trying to teach people of his perspective on culture and everything, and he was teaching the
The kids how to
the
masturbate.
Western children how to masturbate,
What the
and
heck are you?
Rudolf Steiner was against this. He wanted to teach. He told Mrs. Lee Beasland to like, hey, we gotta get stop this and teach people about Christianity. And Miss Miss Basant was against this. Was against his against teaching the Western world about Christianity and anthropology. But they had a agreement that that whenever Mr. Leadbeater decides, then he could teach the yeah, I know. Then he could teach his Christianity to the Western.
Now, now going back, pretty interesting take. Yeah, I'll still continue. But for those who don't know, I was talking to a coworker about esoteric, and she tried to ask me, "Do you even know what esoteric means?" Like if I didn't know, why don't you tell the people who don't know what is esoteric? Not in your definition, but what is esoteric?
Esoteric just means hidden, hidden knowledge, hidden mystery,
Like only like a small number of people know.
history, huh?
Like only like a small people know.
Um,
Yeah.
yes, it's more like hidden stuff that is hidden from society. Therefore, it's called esoteric.
Why do you think it's hidden?
Why do I think it's hidden? Is because
Just because like no one pays attention to that, or like
I think it's hidden because it's information that could lead to something greater. Therefore, they hide it, and and like look at the agendas of governments, of leaders, of celebrities. They all have agendas, and they all want to uh, lead you towards their agenda. And and then there's hidden truth.
right.
There's truth, and this truth is esoteric to this world. So and naturally we just have labels to things.
What do you think about what he's saying so far? You that you're yawning back there.
Well, first of all, I am a little bit tired, but
I'm tired too, but you think I give a fuck?
do you want to die?
Yo, not in here, dude.
Come on, keep it real. Keep
Um,
it real. You have a
you
chance
had
to
said that.
express yourself to people and how you think.
Yeah.
What do you think about what he's saying?
Well, I do believe it.
Well, I haven't gotten to the main part. I'm just introducing how
Who? Okay, explain to those who Rudolf Steiner.
Rudolf Steiner is an
Apologist.
anthropologist and theo theologist,
Okay.
and he taught many teachings to the Western world, like
esoteric Christianity. He touched bases on anthropology, Christology, um, and did an analysis on on Christianity and Jesus and the Archangel Michael. And he goes deeper into the sense of how Jesus became God.
God, Christ. That's one of his lectures, and how Michael um, became powerful over Lucifer. But the one of his most interesting lectures was how Jesus became Christ.
And just how I just how like I said earlier, I was telling this to a buddy of mine during Bible study. Shout out Christian. Um, that you mentioned this is how it became Christ like, and I've said it like earlier before. Right now, a couple minutes ago, I said, but how if he was already born as the Son of God? You said because he was, but to prove himself to God, he had to become like that because through the trials and tribulations he had to face. So, did God know? Okay, I'm gonna put this human down, and if he passes all these tests, he becomes the God. Really, because like it kind of sounds weird because in the Bible it just talks about like God already knew this is going to be the man. This is the chosen one. He already knew. So if you want to explain to those for someone right here saying, but how if God he is God, he was born as God. How was he born and became God?
Good question.
I want to understand for myself too. You know, I'm not saying I'm skeptical. I'm like, wait, but that book is telling. The book is saying this. The Bible says this, but this book is saying something else.
Well, look, the Bible does naturally say he is God, and it's a natural way of thinking. But then you do an analysis of it, which which is just the understanding and deeper sense, and you dive deep into the little detail of how things are done. Like it never talks about the moments Jesus ate, or when he went on a walk or something like that. But then there's studies outside of the Bible that dives deep into that little detail, right?
Right.
And that's the study of how Jesus became Christ.
You wanna you wanna explain to those who say you wanna explain to those for what you said how Jesus became God.
Yeah. So in Rudolf Steiner's lectures, in the lecture of how Jesus became Christ, he teaches how Jesus had to go through trials and become anointed to become Christ. A- And here's the thing, that the way he went through those trials is by defeating the ego. He first had to defeat the ego to become Christ, because Rudolf Steiner says that the ego left him when he finally became Christ, and was fulfilled his purpose and became God. In a sense, again, God went through the same. Jesus went through the same tribulations as we do today, the same trials, and he beat those trials. We don't beat those trials,
Right.
and he beat those trials. And imagine, every day that we fail, our ego gets bigger. That ego gets bigger. We all have a strong ego. Jesus beat the ego. So therefore the ego left him. There was no such thing. Think of it as a plant. We we water our ego every day, no matter how. Jesus never watered that plant. And therefore it never grew. So Jesus beat the ego and the ego left him. And therefore he was egoless, and he became so selfless. When you have no ego, you become humble, right? And there's no ego in you. And what did he do? What was the most selfless thing he did? He gave his life for humanity. He became so selfless because there was no ego in him. So therefore he became Christ.
Um, why do you think everything goes back to ego? Well, you always mention ego. Why do you think this all correlates back to ego? You talk about Jesus having an ego. How? Yeah, I agree. We all have an ego, right? Why do you think it all leads back to that, and why it ties in with this that you're saying?
Because ego, I like to believe, and it comes back to psychology, that ego is the dark side, is our dark side. That, and every day we battle the dark side. And what does the Bible say? Our battle are principalities. Our battle is not physical. It's our principalities. It's your own principalities, and it's the ego. It comes from within. Carl Jung says that the origin of sin is within man himself.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that sin is only created when man creates it. The devil, Lucifer's so powerless, all he could do is whisper in your ear. Sin is created once you do the action. Once you listen to Satan. What do you think? All that I'm saying.
pretty impressive. I do believe that, and
What?
well, because 'cause it's speaking knowledge, and it sounds true too. So, and I do believe that too.
And that, oh my god, I just got this mic. Yeah. Okay, so um oh, that's interesting. So the book talks about how, if I quote, it says how Jesus became Christ, and you okay, but he he says like that was one of his lectures. And you say 1912, but so you're saying that Jesus was so egoless that ego left him, and that's how he became. Now this kind of sounds like it's possible for us to do it, but we can't become God. So, and I say that because like, yeah, I asked you this before, but just I'm going with the mind of one of the people who are gonna watch, like how is this true? If like we're not trying to, we can become God, you know, like we can leave our, we don't, we can't, we can like, we can do stuff that's gonna stop feeding our ego, but how? If if Jesus did that, if Jesus did what he did and he became God, are you saying how that we can become God? But it talks about that the Bible obviously says that otherwise.
I am the closest thing to perfection. I am the closest thing to perfection. So are you. And it's because we're created in God's image. We're close to perfect. The only thing that doesn't makes us perfect is our sin, is our ego.
Mm,
When you're roaming in heaven, you're gonna be in God's image. I don't know how it is, but we're already created in His image. We're already close to perfect. The only thing that makes us ugly or not perfect is sin.
I'm gonna cut this up in sections. I'm gonna stop recording right here.